0645 hours, 17 miles off the coast of Samar Island, Philippines. The sun breaks the horizon like a wound, bleeding orange and red across the Pacific. On the bridge of the USS Johnston, DD 557, Quartermaster Robert Billy scans the eastern sky through salt-crusted binoculars. The destroyer rolls gently in the swell, her 2,100 tons of welded steel cutting through water that mirrors the dawn. Behind her, in loose formation, steam the 6 escort carriers of Taffy 3, Fanshawe Bay, St. Lo, White Plains, Kalinin Bay, Kitkin Bay, and Gambier Bay. Small, slow, ungainly ships, converted merchantmen wrapped in thin armor, carrying obsolete aircraft meant for submarine patrol and ground support. This is not the fleet that won Midway. This is not the armada that shattered Japanese naval power in the Philippine Sea 4 months ago. This is what the men in the heavy fleet called the Tin Can Navy. Destroyers and destroyer escorts so lightly armored, a cruiser shell could punch through both sides without detonating. The escort carriers they guard are even more fragile, their flight decks made of wood, their hulls barely thicker than a destroyer's. Commander Ernest Evans stands on Johnston's bridge wing, a stocky Cherokee from Oklahoma, with a square jaw and eyes that never seem to rest. He's 41 years old. The ship beneath his feet has been in commission for exactly 22 months. In his pocket, folded and refolded until the creases have gone soft, is a letter from his wife in Portland. He hasn't opened it yet. He was saving it for after this patrol, after the invasion fleet reached Leyte Gulf, after the troop transports were safely ashore. Routine patrol, they'd called it at the briefing yesterday. Picket duty. Support the invasion. Keep the submarines away from the transports. Nobody mentioned Kurita. Ensign John C. Mitchell, Johnston's gunnery officer, emerges from the chart house with a coffee mug that's been empty for an hour. He's 23 years old and has been at sea for 18 months. "Morning, Captain. Weather's clearing up nice." Evans grunts. His eyes are on the horizon, where the sky meets the sea in a hard, clean line. Something feels wrong. The air tastes wrong. The light is too clear, the visibility too perfect. On a morning like this, you can see for 20 miles. "Billy," Evans says quietly. "Anything?" "Negative, sir. Nothing but—" The quartermaster stops. His binoculars lock on a point northeast of their position. For 3 seconds, he doesn't breathe. "Sir," Billy says, and his voice has changed. "Pagoda masts, bearing 040, multiple contact." Evans has the glasses out of Billy's hands before the man finishes speaking. He raises them, steadies his breathing, focuses. There. Against the sunrise, silhouetted in black, the distinctive tiered superstructures of Japanese battleships. Not one, not two, at least 4. Their pagoda-style bridge towers unmistakable, rising like temples from the sea. Around them, the lower profiles of heavy cruisers, the forest of masts and funnels that can only mean one thing, a surface action group, a big one. Evans lowers the binoculars. His hands are steady. His voice is steady. Everything inside him has gone very, very cold. "Sound general quarters. All hands to battle stations." The alarm cuts through the morning like a scream. Across Johnston's decks, men drop coffee cups and scramble to their stations. Gun crew sprint to their mounts. Damage control parties seal watertight doors. In the engine room 3 decks below, Chief Engineer Lieutenant George E. Wetherill pushes his throttles forward, feeling the destroyer's pulse quicken beneath his hands. On the flag bridge of USS Fanshawe Bay, Rear Admiral Clifton Spragg, Ziggy to the men who serve under him, presses his own binoculars to his eyes and feels his stomach drop into his shoes. He's 51 years old. He's commanded carrier groups in the Atlantic and Pacific. He's seen action at the Marianas. He knows ships. Those are not Japanese cruisers making a hit-and-run raid. That is Kurita's center force, the same fleet that was supposedly crippled in the Sibian Sea yesterday, the same fleet that was supposed to have turned back.
4 battleships, including Yamato, the largest battleship ever built, mounting 9 18.1-inch guns that can fire a shell weighing more than a car, 6 heavy cruisers, multiple light cruisers and destroyers, and they are 18 miles away, closing at 25 knots. Taffy 3's escort carriers can make 17 knots with a tailwind and divine intervention. Their aircraft carry bombs meant for infantry positions and depth charges meant for submarines, nothing that can scratch a battleship's armor. The group's entire screen consists of 3 destroyers, Johnston, Hole, and Harriman, and forward destroyer escorts, even smaller and more lightly armed. 7 ships. 7 thin-skinned, undergunned ships between Kurita's center force and the defenseless transports unloading troops at Leyte Gulf. On Johnston's bridge, Evans watches the pagoda masts grow larger. He can see the bow waves now, white foam curling away from hulls the size of city blocks. The Japanese are in column formation, and they're not turning away. They're coming straight at Taffy 3, and they know exactly what they've found. A cluster of baby flat tops with nothing but tin cans to protect them. "Range?" Evans asks. 35,000 yards, sir. Closing fast." Evans looks at his ship. She is 376 feet long. She displaces 2,100 tons fully loaded. Her main battery consists of 5 5-inch guns, pop guns compared to the 14-inch rifles on a Japanese cruiser, let alone the massive 18-inch guns on Yamato. She has 10 torpedo tubes, a handful of 40mm anti-aircraft mounts, an armor plate thin enough that you can hear the ocean through it when you sleep in your bunk. She was built to hunt submarines and screen carriers against air attack. She was not built for this. No ship was built for this. Behind him, Evans hears Ensign Mitchell's voice, tight with the kind of fear that every naval officer learns to wrap in professionalism. "Orders, sir." Evans watches the Japanese fleet. He thinks about the transports at Leyte Gulf. He thinks about the 6 escort carriers behind him, their flight decks crowded with men scrambling to arm aircraft that can't hurt battleships. He thinks about the tin can navy and all the jokes from the heavy fleet boys about destroyers being suicide boats. He thinks about the letter in his pocket. Then Commander Ernest Evans, commanding officer of USS Johnston, gives an order that will be remembered as either the bravest or the most insane in naval history. "All ahead flank, come left to 040. All guns load armor piercing. Torpedoes to ready." Mitchell stares at him. "Sir?" Evans turns. His face is stone. His voice carries across the bridge. "We're going to attack." The bridge goes silent, except for the vibration of Johnston's engine spooling up to flank speed. Mitchell's face has gone white. Billy grips his binoculars like a lifeline. At the helm, Chief Quartermaster John J. Prochaska's hands tighten on the wheel, but he doesn't hesitate. He brings Johnston's bow around to point directly at the Japanese fleet. "Sir," Mitchell says carefully, "that's 4 battleships and 6 heavy cruisers." "I can count, Ensign." "We're 1 destroyer." Evans looks at him. In the growing light, his Cherokee features are carved from granite. "We're an American destroyer. Now get on the horn to Sprague and tell him we're making a torpedo run. Then get every gun on this ship ready to fire." Mitchell moves. The bridge erupts into controlled chaos. Communications officers bark into radio sets. Fire control teams spin their dials in rangefinders. Down in the plotting room, Lieutenant Commander Robert C. Hagen calculates firing solutions for targets so large his tables don't have entries for them. Through the voice tubes connecting the bridge to the gun mounts, Evans hears Gun Captain Fred Mulgraff's voice from Mount 51, the forward 5-inch turret. "Bridge, Mount 51, we got battleships out there, sir?" "That's affirmative, Mulgraff." A pause. Then, "Well, hell, Captain. Guess we're going to have a day." Johnston's deck begins to shudder as Chief Engineer Wetherell coaxes every ounce of power from the destroyer's two boilers. Black smoke pours from her stacks. Her bow lifts as she accelerates, wake foaming white behind her. 28 knots, 29, 30. Astern, Admiral Spragg watches through his binoculars and feels ice in his veins. Johnston is charging, alone. A single destroyer racing toward a fleet that outweighs her by a factor of 100 to 1. Jesus Christ, Spragg whispers, then louder. All carriers, emergency turn south, make smoke, launch all aircraft, and get me Commander Evans on the radio. But Evans isn't listening to the radio anymore. He's watching the Japanese fleet resolve into individual ships. Lead vessel, heavy cruiser Kumano. Behind her, the massive profile of battleship Yamato, her 18-inch turrets beginning to rotate. To port, more cruisers. Tone, Chikuma, Haguro, every one of them bigger, heavier, more powerful than anything Taffy 3 can put in the water. Range 28,000 yards, calls the fire control officer. Torpedoes ready, Captain, reports Lieutenant Commander John A. McNamee from the torpedo director. Evans checks his watch. 0650 hours. 4 minutes since they spotted the Japanese fleet. 4 minutes since the world turned inside out. Commence smoke screen, Evans orders. Johnston's smoke generators burst to life, chemicals mixing to create thick, white clouds that pour from her stacks. The wind is perfect, blowing from northeast to southwest, right across the Japanese line of advance. Within seconds, Johnston is trailing a wall of white that builds and spreads, obscuring the escort carriers behind her. At 0657, the Japanese open fire. The first salvo falls short by 1,000 yards, but the splashes are enormous. Geysers of white water 50 feet high, erupting in a line across Johnston's projected path. The sound arrives a second later, a rolling thunder that rattles teeth and shakes the deck plates. Evasive maneuvers, Evans says calmly. Hard right rudder. Prochaska spins the wheel. Johnston heels into the turn, her frame groaning. The second salvo screams overhead. You can hear the shells, a freight train sound that tears the air and impacts 200 yards to port. Colored dye markers the Japanese use to spot their salvos turn the ocean pink and green. Steady on course. All guns, target lead cruiser, fire when ready. At 0658, Johnston fires her first salvo. Mount 51 barks, its 5-inch gun hurling a 54-pound shell toward Kumano. The other 4 mounts follow in sequence. The muzzle flashes bright in the dawn. The shells arc out over 7 miles of ocean. Nothing compared to the range at which the Japanese can kill them. But it's what Johnston has. Reload! Reload! Mulgraf is screaming in Mount 51, and his crew moves like machines, ramming powder and shell, slamming the breech, firing again. 18 rounds per minute per gun, 90 shells per minute pouring out of Johnston's main battery. Most of them can't penetrate cruiser armor. Evans knows this, but they can damage superstructures, wreck fire control equipment, kill men on exposed decks. They can make the enemy think. Make him flinch. They can buy time. Captain, the lookout's voice cracks. USS Hull is turning to join us. Evans looks back. Through the smoke he sees her. USS Hull, DD-533, Commander Leon S. Kinterberger commanding. She's breaking from the formation, her bow swinging toward the Japanese, her stacks already pouring smoke. And beyond her, USS Heermann is turning too. The tin cans are charging. 3 destroyers against a battleship fleet. Spragg must think they're insane. The Japanese certainly do. Through his binoculars, Evans can see signal flags running up on Yamato's halyards. The Japanese are confused. Doctrine says American destroyers screen defensively. They lay smoke and retreat behind their carriers. They don't attack. But Johnston is attacking, and now Hull and Heermann are racing to follow her into what every man aboard knows is a suicide run. Range to Kumano, 22,000 yards, fire control reports. She's turning to avoid our torpedoes. Good, Evans says. Give her something to worry about. All guns, rapid fire, pour it on. Johnston's guns hammer without pause. The destroyer vibrates like a tuning fork. Spent shell casings pile up around the gun mounts, brass rolling across decks as the ship maneuvers. The Japanese fire back, and now every ship in their van is shooting. The ocean around Johnston erupts in a forest of splashes. Shells bracket her, straddle her, miss by yards. At 0702, Johnston enters torpedo range. 10,000 yards to target, McNamee calls from the torpedo director. This is it. This is why they came. Torpedoes are the only weapon a destroyer carries that can kill a battleship. 10 fish in Johnston's tubes, each one packing 600 pounds of Torpex explosive. But to use them, Johnston has to get close enough that the battleship's main batteries can't depress low enough to hit her, close enough to see the faces of Japanese sailors, close enough to die. Stand by on torpedoes, Evans orders. His voice is ice. Steady as she goes. Prochaska holds the course. Johnston drives into the maelstrom, her bow cutting through shell splashes, spray drenching her forward deck. A 14-inch shell from Tone screams past the bridge so close that men feel the compression wave. It doesn't explode. Armor-piercing rounds designed to penetrate thick belt armor wasted on a target with no armor at all. 9,000 yards. Johnston's 5-inch guns keep firing, training and traversing, trying to knock out the Japanese fire control directors. Mount 52 takes a near miss, the explosion showering the gun crew with shrapnel. The gun captain, gunner's mate first class Clint Carter, takes metal in his shoulder, but stays at his post, blood soaking his kapok life jacket. 8,000 yards. A heavy cruiser, Chikuma, is turning broadside to bring all her guns to bear. Her turrets flash, and the world explodes. A full salvo of 8-inch shells strides Johnston. The destroyer shudders. Fragments howl through the air. On the aft deck, a damage control party goes down. Men screaming. 7,000 yards! Through the smoke and spray, Evans can see Kumano clearly now. She's huge, her steel flanks rising like a cliff. Her forward turrets are firing, their muzzle flashes bright, but she's turning away, presenting her stern, trying to calm the torpedoes she knows are coming. 6,000 yards, ready to fire. Evans watches Kumano. He watches Tone beyond her. He watches the massive shape of Yamato still in column, her 18-inch turrets rotating toward Johnston like the eyes of God. Fire all torpedoes. Evans mashes his firing keys. Johnston's port torpedo tubes spit fire and compressed air. 10 Mark 15 torpedoes leap from their tubes and hit the water running, their propellers biting, their guidance systems locked on target. They leave trails of white wake across the blue Pacific, 10 fingers of death racing toward the Japanese line at 46 knots. All fish away, torpedoes running hot and true. Hard left rudder, Evans snaps. Get us! The shell hits Johnston's aft deckhouse. The 14-inch armor-piercing shell from the cruiser Kumano enters Johnston at a shallow angle, passing through the aft deckhouse like it's made of paper. It doesn't explode. AP rounds rarely do against unarmored targets, but it doesn't need to. The kinetic energy of a 1,400-pound projectile traveling at 2,500 feet per second is enough. The shell tears through berthing compartments, smashes through the officer's wardroom, and exits the port side in a shower of twisted steel and atomized paint. The concussion throws men off their feet. Lights shatter. Bulkheads buckle. In the aft engine room, Chief Machinist's mate Harold Ellsworth watches his pressure gauges spike and drop as steam lines rupture. The roar of escaping high-pressure steam is deafening. "Damage report!" Evans barks into the voice tube, gripping the bridge rail as Johnston shudders through her turn. "Aft engine room taking water! We've got ruptured steam lines and the port shaft is vibrating! Request permission to—" Another shell hits. This one is smaller, an 8-inch round from Tone, but it strikes forward, penetrating the deck near Mount 52. The explosion is immediate. The mount's ready ammunition detonates in a chain reaction of fire and shrapnel. The blast blows the gun off its mounting and kills 3 of the 5-man crew instantly. The remaining two, Carter with his shrapnel wound and loader Seaman First Class Robert Sosick, are thrown against the bulkhead. Carter shakes his head, ears ringing, blood streaming from his shoulder and now from a gash across his scalp. Through the smoke, he sees Sosick trying to stand, one arm hanging wrong. The mount is gone, the deck is torn open, but Mount 51 is still firing, and Mount 53 aft is still firing. Carter grabs Sosick and drags him toward the aid station. On the bridge, Evans assesses the damage with the cold calculation of a man who knew this was coming. Engineering, what's our speed? 23 knots and falling, Captain. I've got steam leaks all over the place and the port reduction gear sounds like a coffee grinder. I can give you 20, maybe 22 knots, but that's pushing it. 20 knots. Johnston has lost a third of her speed, and they're still inside the Japanese gun range. Captain, Billy shouts, torpedo impact! Kumano is hit! Through his binoculars, he sees it, a white geyser erupting against Kumano's bow, the distinctive explosion of a Mark 15 warhead finding its target. The heavy cruiser staggers, her bow lifting, then falling back into the ocean. Black smoke pours from her forward section. She's turning out of line, dropping speed, and the Japanese formation behind her is scattering to avoid her. One hit. Out of 10 torpedoes, they got one hit, and it's pulling the lead Japanese cruiser out of the fight. But there are still 3 battleships and 5 heavy cruisers, and they're all shooting at Johnston now. Make smoke and head for Taffy 3, Evans orders. All remaining guns, continuous fire. Make them think twice. Johnston turns south, trailing thick chemical smoke that mingles with the black oil smoke from her damaged stacks. Her 3 remaining 5-inch guns keep firing, Mount 51 forward, Mount 53 and 55 aft. They're shooting at cruisers and battleships, gnats biting at elephants, but they're not stopping. At 0710, USS Hole completes her torpedo run. Commander Kittenberger has taken his destroyer even closer than Evans did, inside 5,000 yards, before launching his full spread. The Japanese concentrate their fire on her. Shells walk up her length. An 8-inch round penetrates her engine room. Another destroys her bridge. Hole staggers but keeps firing, her forward gun mount hammering away even as flames consume her superstructure. USS Heermann follows, attacking the battleship Harana. Her captain, Commander Amos T. Hathaway, uses his superior speed to get inside the battleship's turning radius, forcing Harana to constantly adjust her course to avoid ramming the destroyer. It's a deadly game of chicken, and it's keeping a 32,000-ton battleship occupied. Behind the destroyer screen, Taffy 3's escort carriers are running south at maximum speed, launching every aircraft they can get airborne. Wildcats and Avengers claw into the sky, some armed with depth charges, some with 100-pound bombs meant for troop concentrations. A few pilots don't even have ammunition. They make dry runs at Japanese ships, hoping to distract gunners to buy seconds. Lieutenant Commander Edward Huxtable, flying a TBM Avenger from USS Gambier Bay, makes 6 strafing runs on cruiser Tone with his 50 caliber machine guns. The bullets spark off Tone's armor like fireflies. It's meaningless, but Tone's anti-aircraft guns have to track him, have to shoot at him, which means for 30 seconds they're not shooting at something else. At 0725, Johnston emerges from her smokescreen to make another gun run. Evans sees the tactical situation instantly. The Japanese have split their formation. The battleships, Yamato, Nagatoro, Kongo, and Harana, are swinging east trying to flank Taffy 3 from the north. The cruisers are continuing south, closing on the escort carriers. Gambier Bay is taking hits, shell splashes straddling her flight deck. Come right to 070, Evans orders. target the lead cruiser. All guns, rapid fire." Johnston's 3 functioning guns open up, firing across 8,000 yards at the cruiser Congo. The shells hit, sparking off the cruiser's superstructure. It's not enough to penetrate armor, but it's enough to make Congo's captain angry. The heavy cruiser turns towards Johnston, abandoning her pursuit of Gambier Bay to deal with this annoying destroyer, which is exactly what Evans wants. For the next 40 minutes, Johnston fights alone. She weaves through shell splashes, returns fire with her remaining guns, lays smoke to cover the carriers. She's listing 7 degrees to port from flooding. Her speed is down to 17 knots. Her radar is gone, knocked out by near misses. Fire control has switched to local control, each gun mount tracking and firing independently because the central fire control computer is dead. But she's still fighting. At 0750, a Japanese destroyer division, 4 ships, breaks from the main formation to finish Johnston off. They're smaller than the cruisers and battleships, but they're fresh, undamaged, and they outnumber Johnston 4-1. Lieutenant Hagen, in the plotting room, runs the numbers and realizes they can't win this. They can't even run. The Japanese destroyers are faster than Johnston's current best speed. He picks up the voice tube to the bridge, ready to recommend they prepare to abandon ship. But before he can speak, he hears Evans's voice, calm and steady. "Come left to 340. All guns target the lead Japanese destroyer. We're going in." Hagen closes his mouth, puts down the voice tube, returns to his plotting table. If the captain wants to charge 4 destroyers, then they'll charge 4 destroyers. Johnston turns toward the enemy. Mount 51 fires first, the shell passing so close to the lead Japanese destroyer's bridge that the enemy captain flinches. The Japanese return fire, but Johnston is turning, weaving, presenting an impossible gunnery solution. Evans has been handling destroyers for 20 years. He knows every trick, every evasion pattern. He plays Johnston like an instrument, using her damaged steering to create irregular movements that confuse Japanese fire control. The 4 Japanese destroyers unleash their torpedoes, a spread of 16 long lance torpedoes, the best in the world, each one capable of sinking a battleship. Evans sees them coming, tracks their wakes. Hard right rudder, all ahead flank. Wetherell gives him everything he has left. Johnston's engines scream. Her damaged hull groans. She comes right, threading the needle between 2 sets of torpedoes, the wakes passing 50 yards to port and starboard. One torpedo malfunctions, broaching and skipping across the surface. The others raced past, missing. Hard left, all guns, continuous fire. Johnston's 5-inch guns pound the Japanese destroyers. Mount 51's crew is working like madmen. Malgraf has abandoned fire control procedures and is firing by instinct and rage. Shell, powder, breach, fire. Shell, powder, breach, fire. 22 rounds per minute, everyone aimed at Japanese steel. One of the enemy destroyers takes 3 hits to her superstructure and turns away, trailing smoke. The others press the attack, but they're hesitant now. This American destroyer should be dead. She should be on the bottom. She's been hit multiple times. She's down to half speed. She's outnumbered, but she's still attacking, still firing, still refusing to die. At 0820, Johnston's luck runs out. 3 shells arrive simultaneously. A 6-inch round from a Japanese destroyer penetrates the forward fire room, exploding among the boilers. Superheated steam fills the compartment, killing everyone inside instantly. A 5-inch shell destroys Mount 55 aft, and a 3rd shell, probably from the cruiser Haguro, finally catching up to the fight, hits Johnston amidships, penetrating to the keel. The destroyer shudders. Her bow drops. Water pours through the ragged holes in her hull. In the forward engine room, the lights go out. Emergency lanterns click on, painting everything in red. "Captain," Wetherall's voice comes through the tube, and he sounds tired. So tired. I've got nothing left to give you. We're done. Evans looks at his ship. Mount 51 is still firing. Malgraf won't quit until someone physically drags him away from his gun. But Mount 53 is silent, its crew dead or wounded. Mount 55 is a twisted wreck. The 44mm guns on the starboard side are firing at a Japanese destroyer with their crews standing ankle-deep in water on a deck that's canting further to port with every second. Through the smoke, Evans can see the escort carriers. They're still afloat, still running. Gambier Bay is burning, but still moving. The Japanese are breaking off, some turning back north, others milling in confusion. Taffy 3 is going to survive. Evans picks up the ship-wide announcing system. His voice echoes through every remaining compartment, every passageway, every gun mount. All hands, this is the captain. Abandon ship. I say again, abandon ship. It has been an honor to serve with you. The order passes through Johnston like an electric shock. Men who have been fighting for 90 minutes, men who have loaded guns and sealed bulkheads and carried wounded through flooded compartments, suddenly stop. For a moment, the ship is silent except for the sound of rushing water and the distant rumble of Japanese guns. Then they move. On Mount 51, Malgraf fires one last round, a middle finger to the Japanese fleet, before ordering his crew to the main deck. In the plotting room, Hagen secures his charts and navigation logs, stuffing them into a waterproof bag. In the engine spaces, Weatherall and his black gang shut down what's left of the boilers and climb toward daylight. Johnston is settling by the bow, her forward deck already awash. The list to port has increased to 25 degrees. Men slide down the slanted deck toward the rail, grabbing stanchions and lifelines. They inflate life jackets, throw rafts overboard, help wounded shipmates over the side. On the bridge, Evans watches his crew abandon ship. He makes no move to leave. Executive Officer Lieutenant Commander Robert C. Hagen climbs up from the plotting room and finds his captain standing at the windows, binoculars in hand, still watching the Japanese fleet. "Captain, we need to go." Evans doesn't answer. He's looking north, where the Japanese formation is breaking up. The tight column formation that Kurita brought into battle has dissolved into scattered groups. Some ships are turning north, others are circling. The battleship Yamato, the most powerful warship in the world, is steaming away from Taffy 3, not toward it. "They're retreating," Evans says softly. "Bob, they're retreating." Hagen follows his gaze and sees it too. The Japanese aren't pressing their attack, they're withdrawing. After 90 minutes of battle, with victory within their grasp, they're turning back. "Sir, we have to leave, now." This time Evans nods. He takes one last look at his bridge, the helm where Prohatska stood for 90 minutes, the chart table, the captain's chair he's barely sat in since the war began. Then he follows Hagen down to the main deck. The water is warm when they hit it. Johnston goes down 10 minutes later, her bow pointing toward the depths, her stern rising until her still turning screws are visible above the waterline. She hangs there for a moment, silhouetted against the morning sun, and then she's gone. The ocean closes over her, and 327 men are left swimming in the Pacific. 15 miles north, on the bridge of the battleship Yamato, Vice Admiral Takeo Kurita stands at the chart table and tries to understand what just happened. His force has lost the heavy cruiser Kumano, limping back toward Brunei with her bow blown off. The cruiser Suya is burning from American air attacks. 3 of his destroyers are damaged, and he has failed to destroy a single American fleet carrier because they weren't fleet carriers. Kurita's intelligence officer has finally identified the ships they've been fighting: CVEs, escort carriers, jeep carriers, the Americans call them, converted merchantmen with wooden flight decks and 5-inch guns, the smallest, slowest carriers in the U.S. Navy. And their escorts weren't heavy cruisers, they were destroyers, tin cans, ships so small that Yamato's main guns could barely depress low enough to hit them. But those tin cans fought like heavy cruisers. They charged his battleships. They fired thousands of rounds. They laid smoke screens that blinded his gunners and launched torpedo attacks that forced his ships to maneuver constantly. His lookouts reported more American ships in the smoke. They swore they saw masts and superstructures of fleet carriers, of heavy cruisers, of a much larger force. Kurita had believed them. In the chaos of battle, with destroyers attacking from suicidal ranges and aircraft swarming overhead, he had convinced himself that he'd stumbled into the American Third Fleet, that Admiral Halsey's fast carriers were just over the horizon, that this was a trap, so he ordered the retreat. Now, studying the maps and the radio intercepts, he realizes the truth. There was no trap. There were no fleet carriers. There was only Taffy 3, 6 escort carriers and 7 escorts, and they had bluffed him. They had bluffed the Imperial Japanese Navy with smoke and fury and a courage that bordered on insanity. Kurita's chief of staff approaches. "Sir, we can still catch them. The escort carriers are within range. We can—" "No," Kurita says quietly. "Signal the fleet. We withdraw to Brunei." He doesn't mention that his nerve is broken, that every instinct is screaming at him that pressing forward will lead to disaster, that he can still see in his mind those destroyers charging through shell splashes, their guns firing even as they died. The Imperial Japanese Navy turns north and sails away from the greatest victory it will never win. In the water off Samar, Commander Ernest Evans floats in his life jacket. Around him, Johnston's crew is scattered across 2 square miles of ocean. Some are clinging to rafts. Others tread water or float on their backs, conserving energy. The wounded are supported by their shipmates. Evans' left arm is broken. He's not sure when it happened, but he can't move it. His ribs hurt when he breathes. He swallowed seawater and his throat is raw, but he's alive. Through salt-stung eyes, he watches the Japanese fleet disappear over the northern horizon. He watches American aircraft, more of them now, coming from fleet carriers that finally got word of the battle, swarm over the retreating enemy. He watches the escort carriers of Taffy 3 slow down, turn back, begin launching rescue operations. "We did it," someone says nearby. It's Ensign Mitchell, clinging to a piece of decking, blood from a scalp wound staining the water pink around his head. "Captain, we actually did it." Evans wants to answer, but he's too tired. He just nods. They held 7 ships against a battleship fleet, and they held long enough for the carriers to run, long enough for help to arrive, long enough to turn mockery into legend. The rescue operations continue through the day. Destroyers and destroyer escorts from other task groups arrive to pull survivors from the water. Of Johnston's crew of 327 men, 186 survive. Commander Ernest Evans is not among them. Witnesses report seeing him in the water, alive, after Johnston sank, but by the time the rescue ships arrive, he's gone. Pulled down by wounds, by exhaustion, or by the sea itself. They never find his body. USS Hoole sinks at 0855 after 3 hours of continuous combat, taking 253 of her 358-man crew with her. USS Samuel B. Roberts, a destroyer escort even smaller than the destroyers, fights until her ammunition is exhausted, then fights with her sole remaining gun until a magazine explosion tears her apart. She loses 90 men. The escort carrier USS Gambier Bay, hammered by cruiser shells, becomes the only American carrier sunk by surface gunfire in the entire war. But Taffy 3 survives. The transports at Lady Gulf survive. The invasion survives. 5 months later, in a ceremony at the Washington Navy Yard, Commander Ernest Evans is posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor. The citation reads in part, "For conspicuous gallantry and intrepid calendar at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty. boldly attacking a vastly superior force, Commander Evans fought his ship with such indomitable determination that he materially contributed to the critical defeat of the enemy. The medal goes to his widow in Portland, along with the letter he never opened. In naval history, the Battle off Samar becomes a case study in courage and tactical brilliance. Military academies around the world teach it. They analyze the decisions, the formations, the gun solutions. They try to explain how 7 ships held off a fleet. But the numbers don't explain it. The tactics don't explain it. What explains it is simpler and more terrible. Men who knew they were going to die decided dying well mattered more than dying safely. Sailors who served on ships dismissed as tin cans proved that the steel in their hulls mattered less than the steel in their spines. The Japanese called it a battle fought by samurai. They couldn't comprehend how American sailors, comfortable Americans, wealthy Americans, supposedly soft Americans, could fight with such ferocity against impossible odds. But the men of Taffy 3 understood something the Japanese didn't. You don't need a battleship to be a warrior. You don't need heavy armor to stand your ground. You need only the will to charge when every instinct screams to run, to fire when the enemy outguns you, to keep fighting when fighting is hopeless. On October 25, 1944, off the coast of Samar Island, the Tin Can Navy proved that mockery is a poor shield against courage. They were small ships, weak ships, ships built for escort duty and submarine patrol, not for surface combat with battleships. But when the moment came, when the pagoda masts rose over the horizon and the world turned inside out, they charged. And in charging, they became immortal.